right, well, we're going to go ahead and get started here this morning. Again, Poseidon's Education and Awareness Campaign. This is session number 9 already. For those that have been traveling this journey with us that we started in August, we're winding down as we have 2 more sessions left before it's time to get in front of our legislators and educate and bring the awareness to their offices of what we've learned during this campaign. Today's session is Policy and Action, Advocating for the Future of Out-of-School Time. This is right on time with our Advocacy Day approaching. It will give you some extra, I'll say, tips and information that will help support not just your conversation, but build the relationship with the legislator. I quickly just want to remind you all that the After School Alliance, who's our partner and across the country for out-of-school time programs, does have a Policy Pulse call every second Friday at noon. So we'll drop in the chat the link for you to go ahead and complete the registration, which is just your name, organization, and your contact information, which you will then begin receiving those invites for those Friday at noon calls. Last but not least, I just wanted to touch base and celebrate Pennsylvania's attendance at the National After School Alliance Conference that was held in DC last week, March 12th through the 14th. In combination with this conference, we had Action Day on the Hill down there in DC. So Pennsylvania was fortunate to meet with several different congressmen and women to talk about the importance of after school in Pennsylvania. So I just wanted to give a big congratulations to all that was able to get down there to the conference or on the Hill that day to help celebrate out of school time. All right, so going to move right in next here to meeting our presenter. Founder and senior fellow of the Education Policy and Leadership Center. I won't read everything here as it is on our website, and again, don't need to read it verbatim here, but just to really highlight Ron's service to the Pennsylvania legislator for a very long time, 24 years as a member of the House of Representatives, and then while in that position, the committees that he supported and the efforts across the state here. So we're really grateful to have Ron today as our feature presenter. And with that, I will stop my share and turn it right over to you, Ron.
Okay, Contral, thanks very much. Well, I am very happy to be with you folks. I do this probably once a year, maybe sometimes twice a year for Contral and folks at the Center for Schools and Communities. And I just want to tip my hat to all of you who are participating as ambassadors. It's a special commitment that you make, and it really is important to the enterprise. So don't underestimate the commitment you're making, but certainly do not underestimate the potential that you have to actually impact on public policy and the implementation of good public policy. Contral mentioned I was in the legislature, but that's a history lesson. I've been out of the legislature now for almost 28 years. I did not run for re-election in 1998. So I got elected as a young guy. I was 26, 27 years old when I started this stuff. So I'm 79 now, working on the 80th year. So for the last 27, 28 years, I've been involved with the Education Policy and Leadership Center, something I started when I decided not to run for re-election in 1998. So I headed it up for 24 years. It remains a very active organization, providing policy and leadership programs. And my role now is much more limited. I'm really a helper from time to time. But again, it's been a wonderful experience. So I tell my grandkids, I've only had 2 jobs really over the last 50 years, 24 years in the legislature and 26 plus years working at the Education Policy and Leadership Center. Just a couple of things before we get started here. I am going to have a series of slides. You are welcome to have them. You have to contact me. There's a contact slide at the very end. If you email me and ask for the slides, I'm happy to give them to you. Also, as we go through the slides, we've got a little less than an hour to go. Don't hold back on your questions. Ask your questions as we go through. If you wait to the end, we'll never get to your question. We'll run out of time, and Contral will be sending everybody off to lunch. So feel free to interrupt. Please don't give me a speech. Ask a question, be succinct, and I'll respond as best as I can. Let me get to the slides here. I gotta remember how to do this as I have a new there's a new system here. And Contral, can your tech person help me with? Okay, my share button finally popped up.
Okay, yeah. I'm hearing a little delay today in a lot of people's communication online or the web so just, yeah, it should show up.
Okay, and
we can see it, Ron. It's not in presentation mode, so we can kind of see the slides on the left. I don't know if you the slides.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to get rid of. And I got a message up above that I got to get rid of.
Okay.
Okay, there we go.
All right, well, Ron, get some things there.
There we go.
Okay, perfect.
Got everything? Okay.
Yes, looks good.
Sorry for my ignorance about some of the technology. I got a new computer here too that I'm getting used to. Okay. This is really about getting ready for your Ambassador Day in Harrisburg, but also, most importantly, maybe year-round advocacy, because that's what makes this stuff work. I don't want to diminish the importance of coming together in Harrisburg, but the event in Harrisburg needs to be part of a year-long, year-round strategy. And if you just come to Harrisburg, or somebody just comes to Harrisburg and participates in a couple of hours of activity there, but doesn't do stuff back home, the impact is nominal at best. So this is about getting ready for Harrisburg, but most importantly, I think, getting ready for year-round advocacy. And I recognize that you all start in very different places. Some of you have been doing this. You could be doing this presentation, I'm sure. And others, this is relatively new. Same thing is going to occur with those in your own network, whether it's your workplace or even your family. Folks are going to have different starting places. So, this is intended to help motivate and help inform and ultimately help people get effectively engaged. Let me just start with this question. Most of the stuff I have today, I want to talk about how to be most effective. But it's also important to have an understanding of how policy gets made. And so I'm not going to dwell on that, but I'll spend a little bit of time at it. But whether I'm talking to a class or a philanthropic organization, or doing an advocacy program for some other organization, always have to start with this question: why public advocacy? Sometimes we take it for granted. Sometimes folks don't want to do it or feel uncomfortable doing it. You got to understand the importance of public policy. And in this education arena, we got to understand that there's a broad scope of federal, state, and local education policy. Ultimately, not only in Pennsylvania, but in all of our states, state government has a constitutional responsibility for education. You don't find it in the federal constitution, and the state constitution doesn't say anything about local education, local government. but it does give state officials the opportunity to delegate authority to what in Pennsylvania and other areas, other states, we now call school districts. But to understand, have a sense of this broad scope of federal, state, and local education policy, and to fully understand it's your right to petition your elected officials. I mean, this has been fundamental since the founding of this country. And recognize state and federal legislators are generalists. I said I got elected, I was 26, 27 years old. I thought I knew a lot of stuff. I knew a lot less than I thought I knew. And I had a relatively empty plate. And folks were quickly, telling me that I ought to be doing this around education, but I ought to do this around environment, and on and on and on. State and federal lawmakers are generalists. Occasionally, a few become more expert or have more expertise in a particular area. But at the end of the day, I believe good policy depends on folks like all of you, who have the experience, who have the real expertise, who have good information, and you have insight. That's what makes for good policy. That's what helps these generalists in the federal or state legislature become champions for, or at least better proponents of the issues that you care about. Probably most of you belong to some state association, and the association has lobbyists, and those are important, but they are only as effective as their members are active and effective back home and on that day in Harrisburg. And then at the bottom there in the red, I always challenge folks, those of you who have the expertise, who have the insight, who have the stories to tell, who can help inform lawmakers. If you don't do it, who's going to do it? Now, have no doubt there will be somebody telling lawmakers what they ought to do. There was never a day when I didn't have a room full of people telling me what I ought to do. And if you're not there, somebody else is going to be telling me what I ought to do. So that's why it's really important that those of you who care about these issues be engaged and be ready to be effective advocates. This is just a reminder, if you skip that 5th grade class or whatever it was, here in Pennsylvania, our legislature has a long history. The House of Representatives goes all the way back to 1681. We now have 203 members, about 60,000 constituents in every legislative district. And the Senate has a somewhat shorter history, but very old institution nonetheless. There's about 250,000 constituents, not voters, but live bodies, constituents in every senatorial district. Just a reminder about some of the state policymakers, especially in the legislature, around education. And you want to be finding out who these folks are. I'm not going to go through all of that here. Time doesn't allow. But you want to find out who these folks are, and might they be your own legislator, your own House member, your own senator, or somebody close to you. The House and Senate leaders, the education chairs. I had the privilege to be the Democratic education chair for 12 of my 24 years. The other members of the Education Committee, the Appropriations Committee, and chairs. Committee staff, really important to understand the role of committee staff, whether it's in Washington, D.C. or in Harrisburg. Other legislative members. I am always of the belief that every lawmaker can do something. Too many legislators, they respond to constituents and say, well, I can't do anything. They're sitting there twisting their thumbs, saying, I'm not one of those chairs, or I'm not on that committee. Every lawmaker has the ability to speak up. Every lawmaker has different kinds of influence. And I'll mention those in a moment. But don't overlook the role of the non-legislators too. The governor, the Department of Education, the State Board of Education. In Pennsylvania, I was a member of the state board ex officio as the chair of the Education Committee. It's one of the things that we have here in Pennsylvania. The Republican and Democratic House and Senate education chairs serve as members, full voting members of the State Board of Education. But all of those entities play a large role in making policy as well. Just a reminder about some of the basics in terms of enacting a law. This helps as you advocate. It's good to have a sense of how this process works, and to let the lawmaker know that you understand some of this process, and that's why you feel strongly that they can have some influence. But at the end of the day, a bill has to pass both the House and Senate in exactly the same form, comma for comma. So sometimes, we've all had the experience where everybody in the legislature, every House member, every senator tells us, oh, I voted for that. Well, yeah, they voted for it, but they voted for different versions of it. And so, although they all voted for it, nothing happens. So this idea that the same bill has to pass both House and Senate in exactly the same form, that's important. Sometimes if, House passes a bill and then the Senate passes the same bill but changes it, has to go back to the House and they have to say, yeah, we agree. That need to reconcile any differences. That's part of the process. Often, if a bill passes in different form, the House and Senate, it goes to a conference committee made up of 6 members, 3 House members, 3 senators. The majority party has 2 members. The minority party has 1 member. They're charged with the task of trying to find the compromise, find the middle ground. And then that goes back to both chambers for approval. And if that happens, it gets sent to the governor. Then the governor can sign it, he can veto it, or in rare cases, he does nothing, but it becomes law without his signature. But what was really important down there in the red at the bottom, there are many intervention opportunities available. Timing is important. You got to have a sense of where the bill might be if you're advocating for a particular bill rather than just a big issue. But there are many opportunities along this path of enacting a law. Sometimes I do a session on how an idea becomes law, how an idea becomes state policy. Lots of intervention opportunities. A reminder about some of the key events this year. The governor delivered his budget message in February. That's always the case. It's always in February unless there's a change of administration, new governor, then the new governor has till March. There are appropriation hearings that I believe are completed now. These are public hearings, but they are by invitation, so the public can watch. And you can watch this stuff on cable TV now. There's great coverage of it, but to actually be a witness, to be able to say something, that's by invitation. And typically the appropriations are an opportunity for the legislature to hear from various departments and agencies of state government about more of the details of whatever the governor proposed. Then obviously an opportunity for lawmakers to ask those agency and department heads about operations in their department. It's an opportunity. I served on the appropriation committee before I became an education committee chair. And I relied on folks like you to feed me questions as an appropriation committee member. What should I be asking the Secretary of Education? What should I be asking the Secretary of, then it was Welfare, now it's Human Services. What should I be asking representatives of the governor's office? So those appropriation hearings are an important part of the process of making the budget. And they are more fruitful when those of you in the field help your lawmakers, whether it's a member of the committee or a member who is not a committee member but can feed questions to the committee members. You help fuel them with the right kind of pithy questions. Primary election is in May. Every year we have the June 30th budget for the state budget. It's a deadline. It is often missed. One of the things that is just a challenge in Pennsylvania, and those of you at the local school district level know this well, the law requires your school districts to have a budget completed before June or no later than June 30th. And typically that process begins back in December, continues through the spring. There are different deadlines along the way. I'm not going to get into the local budget making process, but the issue I want to point out is sometimes, always actually, your local school board has to determine a budget before they know what they're going to get from the state. And that is very, very challenging. And when I was in the legislature, it was a little different because school boards could pretty well guarantee or count on they were going to get whatever the governor proposed, and then the legislature would ask for more. Well, for the last 10 or 20 years, it's been flipped so that the governor proposes something, but you're not sure you're going to get that. So often the legislature has cut back from what the governor has proposed rather than add to it. So it's a real conundrum for school boards and superintendents and those making decisions at the school district level. Also, keep in mind there's lots of related legislation that usually gets done as part of the final budget deal. That's when there's usually a school code bill. There's usually a fiscal code bill as well. And some of the important issues that you might be advocating for that go beyond just money may be reflected in some of that other legislation. So it's important to be mindful of the big package. And sometimes, even after the budget is completed and the budget is signed or approved by the legislature, signed by the governor, sometimes there's some other budget-related work that remains. And sometimes the legislature is a little slow getting around to it. But usually, the really important stuff gets done in conjunction with the adoption of the budget. And we're not getting into the federal process here today. It is similar in terms of making laws, making a budget, but there are key differences as well. And again, we don't have time to get into it, but the whole idea of the same language having to be approved by the House and Senate is a fundamental principle with the passage of federal legislation as well. Their fiscal year obviously is different. It begins October 1 instead of July 1. So there are some important differences to be mindful of. Policymaking context, I mean, this influences this environment in which you're advocating. So it's important to keep these things in mind. Depending on who you speak with, the state's position is either healthy or challenging the fiscal condition. Those who advocate for spending more money will tend to argue that it's healthy. Those who are more skeptical will argue that we have a structural deficit. There's a email going around yesterday from one of the legislative leaders that said the governor proposed a $1 billion budget, $52 billion, and it is approved. It is balanced, but there's only $42 billion of revenue coming in. He balances it by tapping other resources of the Commonwealth, including the state's rainy day fund. So, that's a big debate that you will hear reflected depending on with whom you speak as you advocate. Are we doing well? Is it healthy, or is it challenging? And are we on the precipice of structural deficit? Keep in mind the budget always remains the most important policy tool. And this is a strong executive state, whether it's a Republican or Democratic governor. And recognize there's a divide between the governor and the Republican legislative leadership right now. The Republicans have the majority in the Senate. So the key players right now in making this budget for 26-27 will be the governor, the Republican leadership in the Senate, and the Democratic leadership in the House. The uncertainty about the control of the House, I put that up there because it is so close. It could easily flip back to being Republican House. And that's in Pennsylvania. One might make the same kind of comment about what's going on in Washington, where the Republicans have a very narrow majority in the federal House, but it could easily flip to the Democrats. And some people think that's going to happen come November. One of the things that's challenging, I think, is that there's been a lot of turnover of education chairs in both the House and Senate. I had the privilege of being a chair for 12 years. During that time, I served with a couple of Republican members, but they each served for 6 or 8 years. There are deep divisions in the legislature based on ideology. Pennsylvania's always had a partisan legislature, but around education issues, we could muster a majority or a 23-0 vote in the Pennsylvania House of Representatives Education Committee around 1996, 97, 23-0, Republican and Democrat, that said vouchers were a bad idea. And we raised a number of issues in that report. You couldn't come with that kind of report now. I probably couldn't get all the Democrats to agree with one another, all the Republicans to agree with one another. There are deep divisions based on ideology, and that's something you have to contend with. One of the things that I lament for many, many years, we really don't have a vision for education and children in Pennsylvania. We have lawmakers who will have a vision. We have different policies that will lay out some goals, but we really don't have a well-articulated long-term vision for where we want to get to, a clear spelling out or a clear articulation of goals that represent a vision for education and children in Pennsylvania. That's challenging. And it leads to a policy not being driven necessarily by good information and good data. It's an old story, but it reflects a mood that existed then and maybe to some degree now. There was a report, it was about higher ed. It was about community colleges and higher ed access. But there was a breakfast program, and the person who authored, it was an out-of-state person who authored that report, reported to this audience, including legislators, who pointed out that Pennsylvania had some good institutions, but in some ways we were data free. We didn't know the answers to some things. And some lawmaker in the audience 30 years ago said, and we don't want to know. That was a sad testament. But often policymakers want to be driven by what some neighbor told them or how they remember school was when they were in school 30 or 40 years ago, or maybe only 10 or 20 years ago. The effects of gerrymandering, this has implications at the federal and state level. But today, with the right kind of software, I can find some 12-year-old kid who will create maps, legislative maps that will guarantee a Republican or a Democratic district in probably 80% and maybe even 90% of the cases. So gerrymandering is one of the things that is a reality, which means that most of the real fights are in the primaries rather than the general election. And that has an impact on the nature of the legislature, where, in my opinion, and I think the opinion of many others, there's not a lot of middle ground anymore. Folks, lawmakers are being driven by their base more to the right or more to the left, more conservative, more liberal. I grew up in an environment, and I just wrote something for somebody else, where politics was about finding common ground. And elected office was dealing with the need for compromise. You don't win everything. The environment today challenges those beliefs on my part, and something you need to be mindful of as you are active advocates. Redistricting, that occurred in 2021. It'll be occurring again in 2030, 2031, 2032 after the next census. So,
Ron, I got a question.
Yes.
Question real quick.
Go ahead.
You talked about the governor's budget and what he proposes and then what's there and then that balance. other than the rainy day fund, what are the other resources that could be tapped in to make up that balance, that budget?
Well, the one that comes to mind, because it's been floating around for years, is to legalize marijuana and to tax it in a way that it becomes a revenue generator. Not just medical marijuana, but marijuana for recreational use. And again, there's big debate about whether that's a good idea or not. But there are some folks who advocate it because it means more money for the state and would help balance the budget. So sometimes the answer to how do you balance a budget involves new taxes, new revenues, new fees, etc. Okay. So moving on. Probably all of you or most of you belong to some organization that tries to influence. They may be formal lobbyists. They may just work as advocates without stepping over the line to be a lobbyist. But these organizations up here, school boards, superintendents, school business officers, the two unions, that long one, PAESSP, that's school principals. And I put Teamsters on there as an interesting note. I think it's still the case. In Philadelphia, the principals are members of a Teamsters union. Folks organize in different ways. PTA, PTOs. In Philadelphia, I know there's still a very active parent power program. One of our EPLC fellows helped to head that up many years ago. EPLC itself, the Law Center, Ed Voters, you can go on and on. There's a proliferation of organizations that seek to influence the legislature and policymakers generally. So as I said before, for me in years past, and even more so now, there is no end to the number of people and organizations trying to tell me what to do or what I ought to do. So you don't want to leave that field to everybody else, because it will not be an empty field. There will not be a vacuum there. All these folks, whether you agree with them or not, whether they agree with you or not, they're going to help fill that vacuum or fill that space. So for effective advocacy, here's the framework. You got to know the issues. You don't have to be the expert at it, but you got to know what you're talking about. You got to know why your stuff is important. You got to have some sense of this process that I briefly described and have a sense of who the decision makers are. I have a slide about the policy levers. I think it's coming up here. You got to gauge this political environment that I began to describe. And then we're going to spend time talking about what works for advocacy. On knowing the issues, again, I won't read all this stuff, but you got to understand what the problem is and what you're seeking. And have a sense of who's going to be affected, who's going to be helped, but maybe who's negatively affected. Is there a cost involved with this? Sometimes we advocate for things where there's money involved, but we don't want to admit that there's money involved, that there's a cost to it. You need to be upfront. You need to be honest about that. I also will say, this is not on any of these slides. I don't think it is. Just based on my personal experience, if you're part of that long line of people in front of me or in front of your legislator asking for money, don't in the next breath tell that legislator you're against taxes. That's just intellectually dishonest. If you want to benefit, whether it's personal or your program or your cause, you want it to benefit financially, you got to support legislators who make the tough decisions to actually raise the money, however they raise it. You can't ask for stuff and then condemn them for raising the money. Have an elevator speech ready. We're talking about meetings in Harrisburg. We're talking about meetings at home. But you might see the governor in the elevator in the Capitol when you're there, or your legislator. And it's only a 5 or 6 story building. So what are you going to say between floor 1 and floor 2 where the governor gets off, or floor 5 where your legislator might get off? What are you going to say in those 10 or 15 seconds that's going to resonate with them, and stick with them after they get off that elevator? So know your legislators, know who they are. Let me ask, I can't see all the hands, so this is just a rhetorical question, but how many of you know your legislator? And then the more important, equally important question, how many can honestly say your legislator knows you? Because that's critical to this stuff. That's where you want to get, that they know you. So is the legislator incumbent or new? Where do they live? You want to have a sense of their background. I did some work around early intervention issues. I played a role with Act 212 of 1990, our early intervention law for infants birth through the beginner age of school. During much of that work, folks understood a little bit of my background. They kind of understood that my wife was working at an early education program in Pittsburgh, the Matilda Tice Center, for any of you who might happen to be in Pittsburgh. Jenny worked there for a long number of years. She was part of the family support there. When I did work on playground safety, folks understood that my youngest son, or my oldest son, my first son, had a terrible head injury in a playground accident, coming down a sliding board onto concrete in his schoolyard. You want to get into the head of your lawmaker. You want to get a sense of what makes them tick. You want to have a sense of who their supporters are, who their donors are. Sometimes effective advocacy is about reaching out to the donors of a lawmaker, asking for them to help with the advocacy effort. And who are their opponents too? What are their legislative interests? You want to have a sense of their past voting record. When I was in office, I was unimpressed by the person who came in and gave me hell about voting a certain way when they had no idea how I voted and weren't aware that I had voted in favor of what they wanted. So I have a sense of where your lawmaker has been on your issues. And again, the staff issue. Who are the staff? You're going to want to get to know the staff, particularly back there at home, back in your home district. Harrisburg office too, but those key people back home running the district office or district offices now, they're critical. And again, in red at the bottom, as much as we would like lawmakers to start out where we are, many of them are not. You got to start the conversation where they are. And so, God forbid it's somebody that doesn't like kids, but maybe you have to use the economic development argument rather than the we like kids argument on some lawmakers. Again, you got to figure out where they are, and then you got to meet them where they are. That's where you start. So influencing your legislator, if I did nothing here, only had a minute instead of this hour, I'd say this is there at red. This is about building a trusting relationship between you and the policymaker, year-round and long-term. Certainly in Harrisburg, but that visit to Harrisburg, that may for some people be the start of relationship building. For others, it may be building upon a solid foundation you already have. But over time, in each case, you want to build a solid foundation, and that requires year-round and long-term activity. So again, you first focus on your own legislators. These are the people you can vote for, or even run against. Which sometimes they're mindful of that. So focus first on your own legislators, although you don't want to ignore other key lawmakers. But you got to establish your own credibility. Don't ever lie. Don't ever mislead. I'll tell you a story. Contral's heard this before. It just highlights a lot of this stuff on this slide and a couple more. When it had to be 1974. I think there are a couple of people here from Wilkinsburg. Wilkinsburg was going to be part of my legislative district and was for throughout my career. I was in a parking lot at a farmer's market during the summer of 1974 in Wilkinsburg. I was campaigning. And there was a farmer's market there, and there was a table set up by what was then Allegheny East MHMR. And a young guy, a few years older than I am, and he is now deceased, Ray Webb, was the executive director of Allegheny East. He was manning that booth and passing out literature about MHMR issues. We met that day, that summer day. I gave Ray my propaganda about why I was a good candidate. He gave me his propaganda about MHMR. Out of that chance meeting in the parking lot, Ray and his wife, Elby, they had a coffee klatch for me at their home. They invited their neighbors in. They did door-to-door campaigning for me in their neighborhood. They put up a yard sign in their neighborhood. Ray, over time, became the campaign chair of my committee for probably 18 years or so. Once I got elected, Ray asked me to serve on the board of directors at Allegheny East. Anything I think I know about MHMR issues over these last almost 50 years goes back to Ray asking me to serve on that board and me having a chance to interact with staff and with clients and with advocates, again, respecting confidentiality issues. Later on, Ray was the Social Worker of the Year. He asked me to introduce legislation to provide for licensure of social workers in Pennsylvania. It did not exist before. I agreed to do that. Didn't have a long debate about it. He would take care of building the advocacy network. I would take care of the legislative side. We got licensure work done. When I was on that appropriations committee, Ray was the guy I called to ask, what do you think about the governor's budget? Is there enough money here for MHMR activities? What questions should I be asking of the respective department secretaries? Ray and I developed that kind of trusting relationship. That's where you want to get to. I tell that story about Ray and myself and our experience because it is what you want to get to. You want to get to know the legislative staff. I already mentioned that. You want to build a team of constituents. Who else supports your idea? Are there employers? Are there parent groups? Are there teachers? Who else? You want to build that team of constituents because maybe together you go to your lawmaker then, whether it's visiting in Harrisburg or, very importantly, visiting in your district. You want to get them onto your turf. There is little that is as powerful as getting the lawmaker into your school building or into your institution or into the place where your staff and maybe your parents convene. Get them to see your program in action. Get them to understand these are real kids. These are real teachers. These are real staff people that are vital to this effort. Get them onto your turf. Figure out who the allies are, build coalitions and networks, the media opportunities. People always ask me about that bottom one. What works? Petitions, letters, calls, emails. The personal contact is what's critical. Petitions are okay, but I was one of those guys. I would call up some of the people who signed a petition and sent it to me. I would ask them, why should I vote for House Bill 10? And more often than not, they had no idea what House Bill 10 was. I heard that it was the thing to do when they were coming out of church or out of the supermarket or whatever. People asked them to sign a petition. So if you're going to sign a petition, know what it's about and be ready for a call from some guy like me 35 years ago. So ask, you got to have an ask. So the ask should be clear about who should do what. Be specific. And it ought to be something measurable. It doesn't have to be a lot, but it's got to be something that you're going to hold them accountable for, like give a speech, sign a bill, vote this way, ask your leader to release a bill, ask your committee chair to release a bill. Be very specific about what you want folks to do and be ready to hold them accountable and let them know you're going to hold them accountable, not in a threatening way, but you want to get into their head. You want them to know and want them to feel that you're looking over their shoulder. And they need to be looking over their shoulder at you because you're right behind them, paying attention. You know, why is it compelling? What's the problem to be addressed? Is it an effective solution? What's going to be the impact of your solution? Is it going to solve the problem or help mitigate problems or what? And again, going back to that elevator speech, because you might not have 10 or 15 minutes to explain all this. It might be the elevator speech too. So this is redundant, but what's the problem you're trying to address? What are the effects? Who are the stakeholders? Who's going to be impacted positively or even negatively? You know, somebody's going to have to pay more maybe. And very importantly, who cares? You may be passionate about stuff. If nobody else cares, chances are it's not going to happen. So figure out who else this is important to. You got to tell that lawmaker, it's not just me. It's not just my family. It's not just my kid. It's not just my school. The who cares. So remember all the policy levers. And again, you know, when you're going to Harrisburg here in a few weeks, you're probably not asking for a constitutional change. You may be asking for something about statute, certainly about the budget. But keep in mind all of these policy levers. And again, down there, the bully pulpit, the legislator can get up and give a speech. Now, that doesn't mean anybody pays attention. The legislator can be a convener. That doesn't mean anybody comes to the meeting. You got to earn that position. You got to earn that position where folks come to your meeting. The lawmaker does. The lawmaker needs to earn the position where anybody cares what they say. But if they do it the right way, if they nurture that and are smart about it, they can have important influence. The appointing authority is also important. I chaired the education committee because somebody appointed me to it. I was a trustee at the Community College of Allegheny County because the county commissioner appointed me to it. I got to be a trustee at the University of Pittsburgh because the Speaker of the House appointed me to it. I was on the FIA board of directors for 20 some years. Some of you may be still sending checks there. But somebody appointed me to be a member of the FIA board of directors. So the appointing authority is really an important policy lever too. And the governor obviously has important authority. Lawmakers, sometimes it's your county commissioner, sometimes it's your school board. So be mindful when they can appoint somebody, that can be a really important lever. And then elections and political campaigns are not the typical policy levers. But I told you already the story about how Ray Webb and I got connected and the relationship we developed and how much he helped me in my campaigns, even in my earliest days, which helped create a foundation for our relationship. So Pennsylvania General Assembly website, you want to make sure that it's a tool you're familiar with. I am not sure whether this is a hot link or not. Let me see. Yes, it is. I hope you see this. Can you see it, Contral?
Yes, we can see it.
The official website of the General Assembly?
Yes, sir. Can see it.
Folks, I'm not going to go through this. It is a wealth of information. 10 years ago, I would have said the General Assembly had one of the worst in the country websites. Now it's one of the best. You can follow your legislator. You can see what they're doing, what they've introduced, how they voted. You can follow an issue by topic. Contrail may have already helped you learn about this in the past, but it's a really important tool that that you want to become familiar with. And then the question is, how do I go backwards out of this? Should have thought about that before. I want to be careful that I don't lose you. I'm going to stop sharing for a minute and see what happens here. Okay, that's what happened. Okay, let me get back to just the last couple of slides here.
There was a question in the chat as well.
Go
Ron.
ahead, ask a question now, and I
Melvina,
will.
did you want to ask it or did you want me to?
So Brian literally just answered it, sharing the website for how to find your lawmaker. But it was just really about like how do you get into the circles where they are, like learning about the intimate details, like the churches that they attend, what places they frequent, and then like learn it in a way that it doesn't feel like you're stalking them. I mean, I just like just so happy you keep popping up everywhere that they are. I don't know if that is what they expect from someone who's looking to ask them a question. Like it just seems a little intrusive. And like Ron, thank you for sharing the story about your son, but like how would we have known that information?
Well, people know stuff about other people, and there's no. I'm babbling here because there's no single answer to your question about how you learn, how you use all the resources available. I was pretty active in my community. My wife was very active in the community. So folks knew us, but they knew me. But there's an increasing amount of public information. You just Google, some names sometimes, and you find out all kinds of things about them, their history, etc. So I want to get to these last slides. I'm looking at the clock up here. But shoot me an email. I'll give you a more thoughtful answer, and maybe I'll share it as an email with everybody about how do you learn this stuff about your lawmaker. Tracking a bill. Again, just remember, a bill that gets introduced has a life of no more than 2 years. It ends on the November 30th of the last year of a legislative session. A legislative session lasts 2 years. A bill might get introduced on the first day or even the last day. Sometimes that happens, and everybody knows it's kind of phony. Nothing's going to happen with the bill on the last day. But a bill keeps the same number. What changes is the printer's number. Every time there is a new version of a bill printed to reflect amendments, it has a new printer's number. And so you want to be careful and mindful that you're working with the most recent printer's number. When you look at a bill, and there's a link down there on the bottom, I'm not going to get to it now because I want to get to these last couple of slides, but it will tell you the names of the sponsors. There's a summary of the content. Sometimes there'll be a lot of stuff that got stricken. It means that there was a big amendment that very much changed the content of the bill. It tells you the latest action. But again, all of this stuff you will find on that General Assembly's website as well. This link down below is just the shortcut to a particular bill. Planning the office visit. You want to be clear about what you want to accomplish. Are you introducing yourself for the first time? Are you introducing your organization? Or are you known to the lawmaker and the staff? Are you starting a relationship or building on one that already exists? Are you there to make a specific request? And I encourage you to make a request. It doesn't have to be complicated. It might be just come to our school. but have a specific request. I tell the story. I would get lots of visitors in Harrisburg or even my district office. Sometimes groups of 10, 15 people would come in. We'd have a wonderful chat, and then we'd leave. And they never asked me to do anything. That was a missed opportunity. So you don't want to miss those opportunities. Have a sense of what your leave behind is and what your next steps are going to be. The office visits, again, just quickly here, make an appointment. The obvious, be polite. Lawmakers often are not on time. They need to be on the floor for a vote, or they're scattered around 3 different or 5 different meetings back in the home district. Do the homework. Know what's going to resonate with the lawmaker. Be ready with a story. Contrell knows this. He asked me to remind everybody. 30 years ago, a young man stood up in front of a House Education Committee meeting in the Reading Community College. He was at the end of a long table. He was a 20-year-old. And he said to our education committee, "Look what you did to me." And he waved at me, lent us a piece of paper. It was his high school diploma. He said, "I can't read, I can't write. I'm never going to get a good job. And you gave me this piece of paper thinking you were doing me a favor." That sticks with me these 30 years later, because it goes to the heart of this debate. Do we penalize kids by giving them that piece of paper when they weren't ready? Or are we penalizing the kid if we don't give them the piece of paper because the school failed them? And that remains a fundamental debate. Be clear about the ask. Stay on message. You may get into a meeting with a lawmaker. You may have 15 minutes. With all due respect, there used to be a senator who was a chair of an education committee. Really good guy, really pro-education. He would take the first 14 minutes of your 15-minute meeting to show you pictures of his grandkids and tell you what wonderful stuff he was doing. You got to be respectful, but you got to say, "Sir, I only have 15 minutes, and please, let us get our story out here." So you got to keep yourself and the lawmaker on message. You don't want to argue or leave a negative impression. Again, be prepared with that elevator speech. The follow-up, again, this is not a one-time activity. Find out other ways you can engage your lawmaker. Like Ray asked me to serve on that board of directors. Or maybe you can serve on an advisory committee for the legislator. Maybe they don't have an education advisory committee, and you can suggest they start one. Offer to be a witness at hearings, be a campaign volunteer, be a reliable source of information. And again, in red, you want to become the turn-to person on your issues. You want to be the Ray Webb for your lawmaker, where he's calling you, asking you, "What do you think?" Asking you, "What questions should I ask?" You want to hold your policymaker accountable, and you want to say thanks. And again, around coalition building, again, for out of school time, who are the other stakeholders? Sometimes the stakeholders they come from different places, your allies. That's at the playground safety bill that I did. Our best allies were emergency room nurses. They saw the effect of kids smacking their head open coming down a sliding board at school. Those emergency room nurses, you wouldn't necessarily think of them right away, but they and the docs were powerful allies. Around some of the work being done now around early education, some of you may know this well. Important allies around early education are retired Army generals and Navy admirals who live in Pennsylvania, who consider it a national security issue that we're not educating kids well enough beginning at the early grades. And so we don't have enough high school graduates coming out ready to join the military. So again, allies can come from many different places. Again, what are their interests? Do they have competing interests? I don't want to get into the whole issue of coalition building. That's another presentation. But those are some of the questions that make coalitions challenging. And remember, it's getting to the end here. Lots of communication tools, ones that I probably don't even know about. But the editorial boards, we have fewer and fewer newspapers now. There's more and more online stuff. So the mechanisms to communicate, the influencers that are out there, you want to get a sense of who are all these influencers. One of the things I did in my earliest campaigns, I was of one party running against an incumbent. I was a Democrat running against a Republican incumbent in a Republican district. I found by searching newspapers and other tools, every community influencer I could find. It might have been the president of the Women's Garden Club or the Rotary Club or whatever, but I found out who are those influencers. You know, the kind of influencers we have today are even more multiple. But keep in mind all of those communication tools. And again, if you want these slides, just shoot me an email, Cowell@eplc.org. If you have other questions, I'm easy to find. You can call me or text me at that number. It's attached to me here all the time. Or send me an email. I may take a day to get back to an email, but I usually do pretty quickly. And if you want to find me on Facebook, I tell people I do not take pictures of my lunch. I do not tell you I'm having a bad day at Walmart. My Facebook page is about policy and politics and some of my opinions. But you're welcome to join me on there. Contrail, I don't know if you have time for more questions or what kind of a schedule you're on, but I am happy to respond now, or if folks contact me individually, I will be happy to respond.
All right, let's show our appreciation and some love for Ron's presentation. Use your reaction key there. What a wealth of knowledge that we just got here. And every time I sit with Ron and have a conversation, there's a great takeaway. So I had a couple jokes on the side. He was dating me, 74. Just, you know, I was only one then. I was just only trying to pay attention all the way up to my mid-20s when some revelations were coming around what high school diploma really did. But all just to say, if you have a question, unmute yourself right now. If not, you're in a rush to get to lunch, you can go ahead and do so. We're not in a rush to stop you if you have a question, but if you have one, go ahead and pose it now.
Or just speak up.
Yeah, or unmute yourself. While you're thinking of this here, just want you to pay attention to the chat. There's been a couple links that have been dropped in there to help support the information that was shared, whether it's going to that the Pennsylvania General Assembly website, and just as Ron stated, real clear, easy use, drag, click where you live at. It'll tell you pretty much what you need to know. You want to dig deeper into the actual legislator, there's probably some information in there as well. Just also noting the evaluation for today, please take time to do that. There's a link in there to make sure you register for our day in Harrisburg. Many times in past, there wasn't a deadline to register, but the number that we're getting, we need to do a registration and have a deadline to get everything in order to prepare for that day. I also dropped a link in here for all of the sessions that we had thus far. We are recording those, so I really strongly encourage you to go back and listen to your favorite one, if not all of them, because all of them are your favorite, right? And get some of that information and begin to build your message for not just Advocacy Day here in Harrisburg, but to begin to build your message for back home. And I know that is something that the network is working on, trying to drill down these messages and you building that relationship starting in your hometown where you're at. And then when you come to Harrisburg, really be able to highlight that. I don't see any other questions. I don't think I was talking over anyone. So looking forward to seeing you all at our next session. We're going to have a walkthrough of what the day looks like. Please note as well, I was moving fast here. We dropped a link in here that takes you to Pennsylvania's fact sheets on the After School Alliance. So again, that'll help build your talking points and the information that you want to share with your legislator. Anything else to add, Ron, before you get out, or you good?
No, I have nothing to add. But let me add something for you and Mike. Uh, I usually don't record my sessions
Yeah,
because I don't want to inhibit anybody from asking a tough question or whatever. But there were no tough questions or anything. No one's going to be embarrassed by anything. So if you folks want to, Contral, if you guys want to make the recording available to your folks, I'm fine with that.
thank you, Ron. We really appreciate it. That's all high quality coming from the center and the network here as we honor our presenters' work. We just don't want it floating around and, of course, anybody changing anything, but we will be able to post this one. So thank you for that, Ron. We'll have that up on the website in the coming days, everyone. We'll see you. April, I believe, 19th is our next session. We're going to have a walkthrough of what that day is going to look like. And I hope there are a lot of questions for that session because that's what it's going to be about is what questions do you have for us to get you ready for that conversation on May 6th. Thank you, everyone. Have a great weekend. I don't know if it's going to be 90 or 40, but you know what I'm saying. Have a great one, and we'll see you at the next session.
Take care. Be well, everybody.